3, 2, 1. What's up, guys, and welcome to the Practice Perfect Journal. Here it is my job to go out, find, and research and test the best information when it comes to high performance and skill acquisition. So no matter if you're just starting out or are looking to take your skills to the next level, there will definitely be something here that will help you make progress faster and further than you ever had before. And December 27th, boys and girls, decade. About, 3-4 days left? How many days we got? Next Wednesday. Yeah, 4 days. 4 days! Definitely starting to set my intentions for 2020 and beyond. So definitely, I started thinking about this last decade and kind of the different lives that I've led. And just what would have happened if I had stuck to some of the things that I started 4 years ago, right? I thought about starting a channel 4 years ago, back in 2015, I think, actually. So it's 4 years later, how much farther ahead would I have been if I just stuck to it? So things like that. and then just kind of putting myself out there a year from now, 5 years from now, a decade from now, and just kind of thinking about what would be what am I going to bring into my life? What am I going to actually do? What am I going to achieve? What am I going to accomplish? What is my life going to be like at the end of the decade? And it's kind of fun. It's a fun exercise, and it helps get some clarity around what you want to do, where you want to go. And definitely, if you haven't ever set intentions before, do that, because with clarity comes power. So if you're very clear and intentional on where your goals are going to be or where you want to go, it becomes a lot easier to allocate yourself or point yourself in a direction, right? Or orient yourself in the world, right? So, but that's neither here nor there. Definitely going to start doing that, putting pen to paper and writing down exactly what I want, probably closer to the new year. But it's a little bit of time to kind of distill and think about what I want. And yeah, so got that going on. It was beautiful the last couple days, actually, here in Ohio. For December, it was 60 yesterday. Made me miss summer. I need to move somewhere warm. LA? Question mark. Hopefully in the next couple months. End of 20. Stuff on my computer screen. My bad. 2020 LA. That's the goal. It's one of the goals. Anyway, so now it's starting to get cold again. Hence the sweater. That I also got for Christmas. So shout out to Mom for hooking your boy up. And thank God it's Friday, dude. With Christmas right in the middle of the week and having weird two-day weeks, the last 2 days have felt like the most Monday Thursday and the most Monday Friday that I have felt and experienced in a very long time. So, beat, exhausted today. I didn't even do anything. I am the desk jockey, as it were, so it's not like I'm exerting that much effort on a day-to-day. And then we got that, so got this, and then got some drum practice to get after this in my never-ending quest on becoming top 1% of all drummers out there. Big goals, but we'll see. Got my whole life to get there, so enjoying the process and the journey as I go. But speaking of practice, why don't we talk about something that I was thinking about this earlier, and I started revisiting Tim Ferriss a lot, and I started revisiting his books and The 4-Hour Chef, which is basically the thing that got me started down this path of hyper performance and skill acquisition kind of mindset. And one of the things he talks about in that book is this idea of no stakes practice. What does that mean? What is no stakes? Not the steak that you eat, but no stakes meaning there's no downside to your practice. And in the book, he kind of lays out, because he's talking about cooking, and they talk about sautéing, right? So that's when you have like the pan and you're like flipping the stuff, right? Like, very technical terms. You can tell I'm a chef, right? It's my sister. That's not me. But so you're sautéing. So it's like he argues that, or he proposes the idea that the worst way to learn a new skill is when you're in a high stakes environment, right? So like when you're cooking a meal is not the time to try and be doing something new for the first time. It's not the time to be practicing something new for the first time. So what he does is he actually, or how he learned, and then how he outlined in the book for learning sautéing, is to get your skillet, fill it with beans, like I think they use lima beans or something like that. I don't know, some kind of dry bean. And you basically kneel on the carpet, not tile floor, not anything hard, but like something like a carpeted floor, and you just practice sautéing, like a foot off the ground. Why? Well, it comes back to this idea of no stakes practice. And the idea is, even if you completely screw up, you drop the pan, whatever, all that's going to happen is all these beans are going to kind of just fall into the floor. They're not going to bounce away because you're on carpet, and they're dry, so it's not going to make a mess. Nothing so bad is going to happen. You just scoop them up and put them back in your pan. And same thing, like if you lose a couple over the edge, like which you probably will if you're doing this for the first time. So you do that, so that way when you go to cooking a real meal, you already have the skills down because you already practiced in an environment where you could stretch yourself and learn. When you're cooking, you're probably not going to take the risks necessary to actually truly find the limits of that skill. You're going to do just good enough to hit this point of okay, and then after you hit this level of like, it's like, oh, this is good, like I don't need to go any farther, and then you just chop it off, and like that's as good as you get. And maybe you make micro improvements as you kind of get better at the skill, but it's a lot harder to go further faster. And this idea of no stakes practice also translates to flying planes. So when I'm trying to remember the story exactly, but it was back when they just started carrying mail by plane, and a lot of the pilots, they started going down like all the time, and because it was like during the winter and they couldn't see like the ground, so they had to rely on their instruments, and all the pilots kept crashing and dying. And finally the president, I think, who was the president? I can't remember. But the president at the time ordered, like, just like, dude, someone's got to figure out something about all these plane crashes. And they ended up coming across this dude named, I think his name was Edward Lynx. Let me find out for sure for you real quick. I know because he invented this thing called the Link Trainer. Make sure I don't unplug my microphone. That'd be unfortunate. Yeah, also fondly known as the Blue Box. What was the dude? I think it was Edward Lynx. Yeah, Ed Link. Ed Link? Edwin Albert Link. Cool. All right. So, Ed Link. We'll call him Ed Link. Ed Link. So he came up with this box, and basically, because he was a tinkerer by nature, and he came up with this idea of how to make all the gears and all the like all the devices in the plane. I'm blanking on words for some reason. He had all the everything. It was basically like a working plane cockpit, and you could practice all the different maneuvers of a plane by using the gauges. There we go. It's great. Gauges. Good job, Ben. And once pilots started using this, they could stretch their abilities. They could test the farthest limits of themselves in the plane and figure out where these rough spots were. Because again, looking back at cooking, the worst time to try and learn a new skill in a plane is while you're flying the plane. You don't want to crash and burn. If you're trying to figure out exactly what the limits of the plane are, or if you're flying in a snowstorm, you've never done that before, and you have to rely on the gears or I keep blanking on the word. The gauge. Jeez, I have gears stuck in my head as gauges. If you rely on your gauges, then, and you've never done that before, you've always done it by eye, all of a sudden, you're putting a lot of risk when you don't need to. So he came up with the Link Trainer, or the blue box, and it allowed pilots to get in and test and stretch their skill and figure out where they were struggling at and identify those areas. Again, it's a way of having no risk practice or no stakes practice. And this was important because, again, they were able to test and try out new things that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. How does this all tie back into what you and I are trying to do? How does this tie back to me getting better at the drums, or learning guitar, or insert other thing that you want to accomplish and do? Again, the worst time to try and learn a new skill, so if I'm playing a show, right, I'm performing in front of people, the worst time for me to try and do a new fill that I've never practiced before, I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to crush it and just do it. Playing a show or during rehearsal better than the show, but playing during the show is not a good time to try something new, like brand new. Because why? It's risky, right? It's not a good time to try and work through this new phrasing that I've just randomly came up with. It needs to go back into solo practice time. And I think most people would be like, well, duh, no kidding. Like, that's a no-brainer. But let me take it a step farther. In terms of practice and no stakes practice. I think that it is important for true no-stakes practice is if you're playing like a loud instrument, like the drums, like I do, to be able to make sure that you don't have to worry about like what your neighbors think, what your parents think, or whatever, right? So if you can find a way, like a time period where it's like, okay, if you're lucky enough, like I grew up and my parents had a house kind of in the middle of nowhere, so there was no neighbors within earshot, so I could play as much as I wanted. And thankfully my family didn't care, but they also ran their own business, so they were gone a lot of the time, so it was me in the house by myself. And my sister moved out of state, but even when she was around, she often went out and did her own thing. So it was generally just kind of me in this house by myself with my drum kit. So I didn't have to worry about, what are these other people going to think about my practice? I keep playing like the same part over and over and over for an hour. I don't have to worry about them freaking out because it's like, dude, I've heard Ben play the same thing, the same phrasing over and over and over, and I'm going to claw my eyes out. They didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about that. And it was very beneficial to my progress as a musician and a drummer, because again, I could just try and play and explore new things and not worry about if the people around me were freaking out. I also came from a musical family, so we were used to my dad playing a lot of instruments growing up, so we just learned to tone out the noise. And also my family runs a business, so we're dealing with the general population that's very loud at their place as well. So we're used to just loud noises and toning out stuff. and finding a way to create this kind of this practice bubble that you can go in and try new things without worrying about what other people think is massive. It's part of the reason why I got this couch. It's part of the reason why I got all the boxes behind me, right? The boxes aren't going anywhere. Okay? I may look like a slob, but I am trying to keep the noise from seeping through the wall as much as possible. That's why I spent money on these foam soundproofing. I know it doesn't soundproof the room. I know my goal is just to dampen it enough so that way the thwacking of me hitting the rubber cymbals doesn't transfer through the wall too much. And with the cardboard boxes, my only concern is, does it actually absorb the sound or does it amplify it? So I don't know how that works. Pretty sure since my door is hollow, my front door, I think that just amplifies sound going out. So I don't know if it's the same idea with boxes. I need to research that probably pretty soon. But creating like this kind of bubble where you can just sit and practice and get after it is going to be key to your success. It's going to be key to pushing the envelope farther, because if you're, again, like me, going back in the day when I plateaued super hard, if you're just playing the same 3 songs over and over and over again because you know you can play those really, really well, and you don't have to worry about, it's like, oh, I can't, he's playing the same thing for an hour straight, or like the same 3 bars over and over and over again, and it sounds like crap and I hate it. You don't have to worry about that. But again, if you're playing the same 3 songs over and over and over again because they're what you're good at, and you're worried about what other people are going to hear and think of you, that's not a good way to stretch your skill. You're going to plateau super, super hard, and that's no good. We don't want that. So my advice, again, if you want to take my unsolicited advice, holy crap, would be to figure out to create a kind of a practice bubble, right? Is to, if you're able to, is to create this kind of sacred area, quote unquote sacred area, where you can just go in and not worry about anything, where you don't have to worry about screwing up, where you can just get after it and test the outer limits of your skill without worrying about what other people are going to think, without floundering in front of other people, like if you're in a performance setting. And just kind of figuring out how to go about doing that. Because once you do that, you don't have to worry about outside inputs coming in, and you can just focus on solely the task at hand. You're going to experience a lot of growth really fast. Because if you're trying to focus on this one thing that's really hard, that you're just learning, that's brand new that you're learning, and in the back of your head, all you can think of is, it's like, dude, play quieter. Dude, play quieter. They're going to hear. It's like, what if they hear? What if they come in and get annoyed? What if? And you have that floating around in the back of your mind. It makes it really, really hard to focus on this new thing that you're learning. So, and again, that's like when I first moved in to this apartment, that was kind of my first thought. Like, I had my electric kit, but I had to play like really, really quiet, because I'm just like, fuck, I don't want the old people behind me to like freak out and yell at me. Like, I can already hear him yelling through the walls half the time. He's an angry old man, right? He seems angry. At least I think it's him. I don't know. But I do know that they're super old, so that's kind of a bummer. So I gotta be quiet, at least more quiet. But yeah, so create your practice space. Create a way to have a no-stakes practice session in a no-stakes practice environment. So that way you can expand your skill as much as possible. You can reach the outer limits that you need to test in order to get further than you ever thought possible. So that's what I got for you guys today. A lot of cool, fun things coming out in 2020. I have a couple ideas on what stuff that I want to test and try out. So stay tuned for that. And as always, this is Ben with the Practice Perfect Journal. Remember, practice makes permanent, so remember to always practice perfect. And I will good outro, Ben. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.